Hi everyone, this is Matthias speaking. I'm the managing director of Sixentix here in Germany. We're a specialized testing company and have been in the market for over 10 years now, with offices not only in Germany, also in Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Serbia and Poland, and the United Arab Emirates. But actually I'm here in my role as a board member of the TMMI Foundation. And Koray kindly asked me to present a keynote to close the whole session and to talk a little bit about test process improvement, specifically from a TMMI perspective. So bear with me. I hope you enjoy the session. I'll show you some examples of what is actually happening in the world right now. You will probably find some of your practices there as well, what you see in your life as a tester, as a test manager every single day. And moreover, I'll also show what can we do about that. What does TMMI have to offer on the one hand, but also what do we see in the industry and how do we as the TMMI Foundation try to put that all together. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to field them via email. You'll find my contact information in the agenda, or you simply write to mathias.rasking@tmmi.org. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you in Istanbul today, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have then remotely. So let's get started. Where do we actually come from? There's this scheme, what I call traditional testing, how is testing being done today? And you can see what we have done. So there's a little soapbox car, a race car that we have really souped up. We have tuned it to the maximum. We took everything that we had and tried to put this little soapbox with wheels on it into really the highest gear, which means we've automated stuff. For functional and non-functional testing. We looked at release cycles. We looked at tester certification to improve people and their skills. So as you can see in this little picture, we put everything on this little soapbox and tried to make it a whole lot better. But there are limits to that, of course. The limits is everything around it. Even with this soapbox on a Formula One racetrack, you will not get very far. You need to change the whole game, not only the testing part. Which means we'd like to get to the Champions League. And sorry, I'm an Eintracht Frankfurt fan, and the Besiktas game was really, really great. But I'm glad that we won at the end of the day. I hope that one day I can make it into a football stadium in Turkey. Your crowd is really great, your fans are great, so looking forward to that. But aside from that, that was the EuroLeague, not the Champions League, and that's what we're talking about. So let's take a look at the traditional testing space. What does this mean? What am I talking about? Very, very often we have frustrated business users. Very, very often we have people who, get pulled into testing for their applications, for their business processes, but they don't really understand why. They understand that IT has done something and now I need to test again. But I mean, if I test it, then there are a lot of defects. So why can't IT deliver something to me as a business user that's actually working? So still in 2024, we have these discussions. If I'm in a user acceptance test, if I'm in UAT, why do I get software that still has defects in it? Shouldn't it already be running? So the purpose is not really clear. Plus, you have business users who maybe requested a certain feature and they didn't get it in this release and they don't understand why. So that is also difficult for them. And last but not least, you have planning uncertainty, which means as a test manager, I would tell business, look, between the 10th and the 12th of December, I need your time. I need you to test the software, look at your business processes, and give us feedback. What happens? Well, by the 10th of December, the environment is not ready. Maybe the test data is not there. People try to log in. The user access rights are maybe missing. They can't really find their test cases anymore. And then the 10th turns into the 11th, it turns into the 12th. Maybe if you find a lot of defects, we need to extend the testing session. And for a business person, this is really difficult because I take time out of my day job in order to test this, and then you're telling me you're not ready. So that's not good. So that's one part that we're facing with traditional testing mechanisms today, because we only look at our small testing bubble, but we are not in control of everything else. Furthermore, if you still look at the world today, there's very little trust in new releases. How often have you heard, if it's a beta version, if it's release 1.0, whether it's an app on your mobile phone, whether it's a new core banking software, whether it's a cloud release by your cloud service partner, let's not go for the first release. Let's wait. Let somebody else do the first release. And we'll then actually do the second release, or maybe the next minor release, just to be on the safe side. So there's simply still no trust in that. And it doesn't get better, because now you have your system, plus all of these cloud installations, the satellite systems, that also deploy like crazy all the time. There's even less trust. Moreover, there's always a lack of capacity. I mean, nobody's sitting around and waiting to test something. That's normal. I mean, we have looked at all of our operational expenditures and try to downsize that, try to reduce those extra costs, those hidden costs, to make sure people are doing what they're supposed to do. And so there will always be a lack of capacity of business testers. You will always have those one or two person in your company who know the payments process, who know the netting process, who know the contract creation process really, really good, and the other ones know a little bit. You need these people, and they simply don't have time to test every single little change. And at the end of the day, there's always an unclear test basis. No matter how long we have worked in this industry, and I've been here for 25 years, it's always the same thing. Either you have requirements that are not as well written as they could be, or you have a legacy system and it's difficult to find out what the system was supposed to do, what has changed in the meantime, or if it's a brand new project, a brand new implementation, you might have a project team that has a very good understanding, but then the scope gets turned away and change and change and change, and after years still nobody remembers what the project team did, especially if you employ external consultants in that, and with them the knowledge goes away. So these four issues are still there. Now let's take a look at what this means in practice. So take a look at a typical calendar, and imagine this is your large core banking system or your large CRM implementation or any large system. How often do you touch it? Well, maybe you'll do a yearly release. Because like I said, let's not go with the January release. Yeah, there will be a lot of fixes. We know the provider. Let's not touch it. Let's go with the later release, the one that is available in April, and then we'll start testing. And still, to this day, for large releases, you have 2 to 3 months testing cycles. That's unfortunately still common. Yes, I know there are a lot of companies out there who can do this a lot quicker, but I'm talking about the majority of the cases, and the cases where you want to start with test process improvement. So let's assume we have our yearly release upgrade, and we have planned the availability of this release is sometime in April. So let's test. Okay, there are a lot of public holidays in Germany in May, so let's extend it, and let's say, okay, June, mid of June, we should be ready. What happens? Well, very, very often what happens is that after the testing phase, you need to extend it a little bit, because you might have found some issues at the very end of the test cycle. You need to fix those defects. You need to get back patches maybe from your external vendors, which means the testing phase gets extended. You need to retest it all of a sudden. Let's add another 4 weeks to that. Then what euphemistically is called hypercare. We have an extended session, 2, 3, 4 weeks even, where we kind of go live in production, but we're not too sure about it. Yeah? So in the SAP world, you call that hypercare. In others, you call it extended support. Whatever you might call it, it's the same all over. If you have a very large release, there's simply not enough trust in the whole system that you simply hand it over and you tell business users, go away and be happy with it. No, you have an IT team, typically the testing team as well, who are there, who do first level support, who can do some troubleshooting, and you need to plan that in. So that's another 4 weeks that's added to your agenda. And even then, you have production incidents. So let's take a look at this calendar now. Yeah, we started with the April release, and all of a sudden, we're at the end of August, and we're kind of live and kind of stable. But that's not all. You have all of these little red diamonds that you can see here, which are actually your satellite systems, because we talked about the big core release, your core system release upgrade. But then you have, of course, all of these different interfacing systems, all of these satellite systems. And they do updates whenever they want to or whenever they can, because you cannot just wait for something. You cannot just block a third of your calendar and then do releases later. So as you can see here, there are a lot of smaller releases, smaller changes to the overall system that happen in between our test cycle. What does this mean for us? Well, our test basis is simply not stable anymore. Yeah, it simply means that I do not know what I have tested, because maybe in July I'm done with my payments test cycle, but then 2 weeks later something was tested on the Swift protocol or something was changed in my downstream system, so do I test it again? Should I? Yes, of course I should, but do I have the time? No, I can't tell them at the end of the time when we're done with the second cycle of testing that, oh, by the way, now I'd like to retest everything again. Yeah, because there's simply so many changes in there. Now, this leads to the result that really, if you look at this whole canon, there's really only one major release possible, which means we can really, for this core system, deploy relatively few new features or bug fixes. If the vendor has 4 releases a year, we can't do it. With all of our satellite systems, that's simply not possible. We already have a high risk of production incidents. And the satellite systems will not be up to date because we're running after it. We're trying to get to a speeding train in full travel and try to test that, but we're traveling all the time. It's not static. Our core system might be static, but everything else is changing dynamically. Now, what does this mean from a tester perspective? Remember our little soapbox. Well, this means that we need to have the right vehicle for the right track. If I want to run with a high-speed train, if I want to fix it, well, then I need to have not only a fast car, but a car that's also big enough, and I need to see everything around it. Imagine a train speeding ahead, and you're driving beside it, but you're only looking at the train, and you're trying to fix that. If you don't see what's in front of you, you don't see the roadblock, you don't see the tunnel, or you don't see the mountains coming up or wherever, you will crash very surely. And it's very, very difficult to take a look as you're going with 300 kilometers an hour to the front and at the same time fixing something there. It takes a lot of skill. So what could we do? Well, we could slow down the train, which is what we typically do. Hence, we only have 1 release upgrade a year. But that doesn't really help. Do we really want to slow down our business? No, as IT, we want to be partners of our business, and we want to enable them to be as quick as possible. So what do? Well, one thing that we could do is we could invest in a lot of automation. And that's typically what has been done in the past. Yeah, so you see here, we have, in addition to our releases, we have created a lot of automated regression tests. We can run that every day, every second day. So the green fields are when I want to run my automated regression test, for example. And if I do that, I'm already a step ahead because A, I can make sure that all of my little satellite system changes, my configuration updates, so these little diamonds that you see here, that I can test them automatically with my regression test pack. I can also make sure that I automatically test stuff and I find defects a lot earlier, and therefore maybe I can get up to 4 releases a year. Is this enough? No, it's not enough. It's what we have been doing, and we're getting better at that. The problem is, A, we need to invest a lot in the maintenance of this test automation, and there are better software and better frameworks out there and worse. If you have a good framework, you can update that very easily. It's integrated in your business process model, so you see changes coming in, and you can adapt your test automation. If you have a very good system, it also generates the test data that you need. So that's all fine. But you also need to invest in your impact analysis. You need to invest in people or in software that understands what kind of requirements are coming in and how do I actually test them. So what does this mean from my perspective that there's a change coming in at the, let's say, the highest level, the application level, and what does that mean to my systems? Which type of regression test pack do I need to run? Moreover, and these are the purple diamonds, you have all kind of infrastructure releases. And nobody has so far looked at that. I mean, how many of you are really understanding, as you're doing your application user acceptance test, that somebody is providing an Oracle patch at the same time, or upgrading your Windows machines, your virtual machines, your Citrix environment, even your BitLocker encryption, or your Active Directory, or whatever you might have, your Azure DevOps, anything might be updated, and you might not even know about it, you might not be aware of it. And let's say 95% of the time, nothing happens. But there will be issues if something goes wrong with that upgrade, and then all of a sudden you realize everything that you have tested is really not worth it anymore. So that means we're at a point where we've done everything that we could, but we need to elevate it to the next level. So doesn't this already sound like a great idea? You know, a lot of automation, continuously testing, making sure all the little changes are in there. The problem is there's a lot more. If you're in the European Union or if you're part of the financial service industry, you might have heard of regulation called DORA, which is short for the Digital Operational Resiliency Act. Difficult word. Operational resiliency simply means how do we make sure that all of the systems in the financial service industries, whether you're a bank, an insurance and asset manager, a hedge fund, that those systems are resilient. Which means if something happens to a business process, to an IT system, or there is something outside like a cybersecurity incident or a disaster, that the transactions within the financial service industry still run. Think about payments, think about all the financial transactions, think about your insurance payments and so on. So the EU got together and thought about DORA and said, okay, how do we make sure banks are a lot more resilient? What kind of issues did we have in the past? And if you look at the past 10, 15 years, you will see a pattern. You will see that one player crumbled. Think about Lehman Brothers a long, long time ago. Lehman Brothers went bankrupt, and overnight you had huge issues. The same happened not so long ago with Credit Suisse. They didn't go bankrupt, but they had huge liquidity issues, and they needed to be rescued by UBS. And the same happened in Germany with Wirecard, for example. There was fraud at Wirecard. There were transactions that simply never happened, payments that never existed, money that never existed, and that had a ripple effect. So DORA, on the one hand, wants to make sure that all of those third-party risks are clear. That I, as a regulator, if I look at the market and I see that one bank, one service provider, one IT company is having issues, that I, as a regulator, as an authority, can understand what the impact would be to the whole market. Is it a local problem because it's a local bank that might have some liquidity issues? Or is it a much wider problem because the payment provider is having issues and that payment provider is serving different other companies and then they will have issues and so on and so on. So that's what DORA is about, third-party risk on the one hand. DORA is also about managing the responsibility much better to create a governance for operational resiliency. Because typically you have the business side, they manage the business operations, they need to make sure that that stuff is working. You have the IT side who manages operations, but there's little connection between those two sides. And something happens, it's typically a blame game. To say, well, shouldn't have you done that? Why did you deploy that? Well, I deployed it because business asked me to deploy it quickly, and so on and so on. Now, DORA also has some testing regulations in there, requirements. Many of these requirements are simple. There are requirements in there that say, okay, you need to have a program for resiliency testing, which means for your testing in general. There's stuff in there that says, of course, if there's a change to a system, it needs to be tested before it goes to production. There's stuff in there that says you need to have sufficient and dedicated independent resources, meaning the people who are doing the testing shouldn't be able to be influenced by anybody else to say, well, just push it to production or you'll be fired. So there needs to be a level of independence. But if you read a little bit closer, DORA takes us a step further. DORA does not only look at what you see on the slide right now, the project and change-driven quality assurance, where you have a demand, where you have a requirement, somebody takes a look at that, somebody decides how to build it, somebody decides how to test it, you do system integration tests, acceptance tests, and so on. That's the normal flow. We've known this flow for 40 years or probably more, and it doesn't matter whether it's sequential waterfall or whether it's agile. In essence, it's the same. There's some kind of demand. There's somebody who builds and tests it, and then it will be deployed. Whether you do that in a 2-week sprint or you do that in a 9-month waterfall is not besides the point. What DORA realized is that a lot of the things that happen, a lot of the outages that we have, not only in the financial service industry, but specifically there, where we have these ripple effects, they don't really happen because somebody is deploying a fix to the SAP system, to the core banking system, to the insurance platform, and that breaks everything. No. A lot of the things that have happened, and like I said, it's not only true in the financial service industry. Think about the last time WhatsApp was really down, or Telegram was down, or Instagram was down, or any of the major platforms. Typically, something happened because somebody did a technical deployment and failed to realize the consequences. For example, you might have heard a couple of months ago this big thing with CrowdStrike, which